And number 6. So given the equations in y equals a cosine b theta form, we're going to find the period, and we are going to find the range, and we're going to find the amplitude. So for number 6, the period, remember, is your 2 pi over your b. So 2 pi over b, in this case, I'm finding my b in there. My b is 1. Since there is no number in front of theta, 2 pi over 1 is just 2 pi. So period is 2 pi. So one cycle between 0 and 2 pi means that cycle has a length of 2 pi, which is your period. I'm going to do the amplitude before the range. The amplitude is your value in front. That's a 3. And you could probably just go through and add, fill those in right away. The range. So the range, remember, is your y values that are being used in the function. So y. I'm going to graph for this first one, and then we'll talk about the next two, how we can find the range without actually having to graph. But let's go look at a graph of this one. So the graph would be 3 cosine theta. I don't want it in that one. 3 cosine theta. And heading to my window, 0 to 2 pi is okay, so keep that the same if you're set it up from the last problem that we did. Since the amplitude is 3, I'm going to now change my y min to -4. My y max is going to be 4, and then my scale I'll count by ones. We'll take a look at the graph. So the y's now are always going to be repeating. That's what a periodic function is, and the y's are always staying between this highest value 3 and -3. And as this would keep cycling, it would go from 3 to -3. It would just keep going 3, -3. So my range, which is my y values of my function, are always going to stay in between those two values. So heading back to my range, I'm just going to simply say that my range is y values are going to be in between -3 and 3. So I can say -3 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to +3. So there would be my range of my function. So it goes back to when we started talking about functions. The x is your domain, the range is your y's. Well, these y's are always going to stay between -3 and 3. -3 and 3. It's going to just go back and forth. You'll notice this amplitude is just going to tell you what your range is. So this one's going to be -2 to 2. This one's going to be -1/2 to 1/2. So those are going to tell you what your range is. So you don't need to graph them. You can just look at your amplitude. On to period for part B, 2 pi over 1/2. Remember, that's a division, so that's going to be 2 pi times the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2 pi times 2 over 1, which equals 4 pi. So there's going to be my period. Range, you can set up your y's are equal to, from the amplitude, -2 to 2. So if you graphed it out, you would see the lowest point would be -2, its highest point would be 2. And your amplitude is the value out in front, 2. Done. Period for the third one, 2 pi over 3. That one can't simplify at all, so that one's going to be your period. Your range, since it's at an amplitude of 1/2, this one's just going to be flipped upside down. So the negative just tells me it's a reflection, but that does not affect my range. My range is just going to be -1/2 to 1/2. And finally then, amplitude. My amplitude is not going to be -1/2. It's always a positive version of that a. So it's 1/2 would be my amplitude. So there would be my introduction into how these range values work. So the domain is all reals because we can just keep inputting values all the way from -infinity to infinity, but you will have a limit on your range. So the highest and lowest points it goes are always going to be your y values. So that finishes up 13.5, and thanks for joining, and we'll see you later.
See ya.
Sorry about